One more segment left for this week on Bang the Book Radio. That is with Brent from DSI Sportsbook with this week's version of the Odds Report. Lots of sharp action out there in both the college football and the NFL betting markets. Very vital, valuable information for our listeners as they head on into the weekend. So here is this week's version of the Odds Report with Brent from DSI Sportsbook. All right, I'm joined now by Brent from DSI Sportsbook. He's a risk manager down there in Costa Rica for this week's version of the Odds Report. Brent, how's it going, man?
Everything good. Just like I said earlier, just counting the days till college basketball season's over.
Yeah, and of course, as we were laughing before the show, it just started. So you've got a lot of days to count down there until college basketball's over. But one thing I want to touch on with you here, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, and we talked about it on Thursday's edition of Bang the Book Radio here, is that the amount of line movement on game day, obviously we see a lot of line moves on game day because limits are the highest that they're going to be. But it feels like this year we're seeing even more action and even more significant line moves. Do you feel like that's the case?
Yeah, I think there's, I don't know, just my feeling is that there's been like a bit of lack of respect for key numbers as well, that people just kind of blow through numbers without much hesitation, and kind of, we perhaps haven't adjusted accordingly ourselves in terms of the fact that, bettors just aren't, putting as much value. I mean, in college football, of course, like 3 and 7 are kind of key numbers. They're not big key numbers in college football, but even in NFL, it seems like, they haven't really had a whole lot of respect for those key numbers, and we've been forced to blow through numbers. Yeah, I mean, our pregame moves, and again, it's kind of depends just on how how the bettors and sharp guys are looking at games, and there's lots of times we'll have totals that just go flying back and forth, and I've definitely noticed this season, especially like closer to kickoff, I've seen dramatic moves on point totals as well. And again, there's some people who are kind of like market leaders, if you will. Some are followers, and some kind of hold their line based on their own action, which is what we do. So you do see perhaps a bit less movement from my side of things, but I've definitely noticed more movement at some of the other bigger books, and I can just assume that closer to game time they're getting some max bets right the last 5-10 minutes, I guess, and just scrambling to get some action back to balance their action, if that's kind of like their philosophy in terms of balancing action. As a side note, I just wanted to note that like second halves I've noticed this season, both college football and NFL, is just the opposite. I've seen a whole lot less movement, and I think maybe the numbers are just a little more solid. They've kind of years after years you kind of perfect your system, I guess, in terms of the second half numbers, and they seem to have moved less, but pregame numbers have definitely moved more. It just that feeling I get as well.
I think it's kind of fascinating because it used to feel like, the entire goal was to bet early in the week, get out in front of the line moves, get out in front of the numbers, and then we're seeing these moves on game day that seem to almost go against what some of the sharp positions were early on in the week. It's just really fascinating to me, and I was kind of wondering if you feel like that's a one-off anomaly type of year, or is this something that we see a lot more now going forward year after year?
This year definitely is different from previous years. I mean, I've games that we've talked about, doing this show on Thursday, you've seen on Sunday, they kind of stayed the course through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then Sunday lines are flipping on us. I mean, like a couple of weeks ago, I remember the Giants were one of the the sharp plays, getting like 4.5 at home to the Rams, and that got down I think like 3.5 and 4 and juice or whatever it was, and then game day, boom, it got hammered back up to like 5.5 and 6 and stuff like that. We saw that last week again. With the Jets game is a good example. I think the Jets were like a sharp play at like a pick and got bet up to like -2.5 and got hammered back down to the point where Tampa Bay was like a 1.5 point favorite at some books. So just the game day that the moves have just blown through numbers like crazy, and there have been quite a bit of changes. Last week, for example, like Buffalo was a example where it the number kind of held true. The sharps were on Buffalo early +3 -0.5. I think that closed like +2 or whatever, +1.5 and 2, and it was solid Buffalo action one way. Now it obviously didn't get the win, so it's still kind of hit and miss in terms of how those games are going. I mean, the Giants last week too, it was like a -1 got bet all the way up to 3, and the sharps kind of late came back on San Francisco a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just definitely day of the game, I am seeing big moves, and it's interesting that they are waiting until day of the game, and I guess that is because they want to get their max bets down and just hoping the number kind of holds where they're looking to grab a number.
And one of my other speculations would be just the injury reports, both in college and the NFL, have been ludicrous this season. I mean, everybody's questionable every week in the NFL. So, once you finally get some clarity on that, then you can fire away on Sundays. But, what's really interesting is I feel like also over the last couple of weeks here, like you said, it's been kind of hit or miss from a results standpoint, but it also feels to me like some of the big movers have been the absolute stone cold wrong sides, and that's a surprising thing to see.
Yeah, that has happened. I've been surprised. Like, I looked at stuff, and I see the moves going the other way, and I'm just like what's driving this? And if I'm not getting sharp action in my own store, I'm just looking at the market. I'm thinking, like, someone's got to be betting it with really deep pockets somewhere. One thing you mentioned about, waiting on injury information, I think it's also worth noting that we're getting to that time of the year where, weather information and the accuracy of that is going to play a factor as well.
All right, well, we'll touch on some of these games here, and again, this is something that we can talk about as we go on through the rest of the college football season, and especially I'll be very curious to see what happens with bowl games, because you get a lot of movement on those opening numbers, then you may get a wave of movement a week or so before the game, and then, of course, on game day, we're going to see these things move around a ton, because that's been the MO in the marketplace, so we'll be able to touch on that a little bit once we get into the month of December here. But we'll go ahead and start on Friday night, game 317, 318 in Conference USA. Middle Tennessee State takes on Western Kentucky. The Blue Raiders are a road favorite here. Sharp involvement on the total, though.
Yeah, on paper, it's kind of a decent matchup for a Friday night game. Middle Tennessee State and Western Kentucky. You've got Tennessee State there as a 3-point road favorite there. Total's up to 59 right now. Now, this game did open quite a bit lower. I think it opened at 54 at several places. I did open at 55 and got bet by sharp money at 55. But as you can tell by the movement, we're up to 59 right now. And that is sharp action that drove that. And again, I just kind of look at the sharp plays. I don't try and analyze them too much. And you just look at these teams. I mean, Middle Tennessee State's been scoring in the 30-point range kind of week after week, and Western Kentucky's given up I think, look at their past 4 games. They've given up over 30 points their past 4 as well. So this kind of does have that look of an over kind of Friday game. My wager count is obviously favoring the over. The public's gonna do that on these games. I'm almost 3-1 wager count right now favoring the over. So not a great spot for me when I've got public money on the over and sharps on the over as well.
What's kind of interesting to hear about that is that we were talking with Brad Powers on Thursday's show, and he mentioned that, it feels like there's been an over-adjustment to Middle Tennessee State with quarterback Brent Stockstill coming back in. Maybe that's the case on the total here as well, that Stockstill, a guy like him, is not just going to affect the spread, it's going to affect the total as well. And maybe that's kind of what we're seeing, is that some of those model projections with Stockstill back suggesting that Middle Tennessee's offense is going to get even better.
Yeah, that could be the case. And again, you've got an opponent who's been giving up over 30 points per game. And again, the spread's only 3, so you're kind of anticipating that both these teams are going to be able to put up some points.
All right, well, let's stick around here in Conference USA, and we'll slide down to game 353, 354 on the board. Charlotte takes on Southern Miss. Real barn burner here in this one. We've got some sharp action on the side.
Yeah, and unfortunately for us, it's not on the 1-9 team. The sharp action on this one did come on the favorite here, Southern Miss. We're up to 17 right now. So not a dramatic move, but I did get sharp action on this one. Southern Miss minus 16.5 is where that came in. So not a big move. I have seen some books touch to 17.5 on this one, so I kind of get the feeling that this one's going to go back up there. Looking at my wager count, I mean, obviously there's no surprise that I've got more money on the favorite here, especially a favorite at home in double digits. The public doesn't shy away from that kind of situation. So wager count on this one in terms of the actual individual number of bets I've taken is 3-1 favoring the home favorite Southern Miss. And I just got a feeling this number is going to creep back up over 17.
Now, as you mentioned here in the notes, you got that sharp action at 16.5. You've gone to 17. Is the reason that you only move a half point because you think you kind of want to sit there and wonder, was this an isolated sharp play? Because you're not going to get a whole lot of public action on this game. So is that why you only move up a half point and then wait and see if you get more?
Yeah, it's kind of like going fishing, like I said. I mean, we're doing this on Thursday, so we do have lots of time, still a couple of days to go. Like I said, my feeling from the action that I've seen it come in from my end, I could probably be 17.5 right now, and maybe I should do that right now based on your recommendation, Adam.
No, I mean, I was just curious. Don't do anything because of me. I don't know what I'm talking about most of the time. I pretend like I do, but I think I get by here.
When they knock on my door, I'll say, Adam made me do it.
I just fake it until I make it here on this show. That's all it is. All right, let's go to game 359, 360 in the Sun Belt. South Alabama takes on Georgia Southern. Have seen a little bit of a line move on the side in this game, but it's the total that's drawn sharp action over there at DSI.
Yeah, I've got some action on the under this one, and decent move already in terms of how much is gone. We're sitting down at 44 already. My wager count does favor the under as well. So I got, public guys betting the under as well as the sharp guys that came in. Sharp money on this one was the under 47. So we've already moved like a full 3 points to where we are right now at 44. So, again, Georgia Southern's not a team that's going to inspire a whole lot of confidence seeing where they are with their record. But these, if you look at these teams as well, I mean, they're both kind of like low-scoring teams who consistently involved in low-scoring games. So kind of, it's tough with these college totals, especially because, I mean, when you start getting like the low 40s and stuff like that, it's like that's really low for a college football game. So you do tend to open up a little bit higher. 47 is where we took our action with sharp money. And like I said, we're down to 44 already right now.
So basically what your plan is with those games that have totals that are going to be in the 40s, you expect under money and then just adjust quickly as opposed to running a total out there that's too low.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, you just never know where people are going to bet, right? And obviously, you do kind of get a profile of your customers in terms of how much you're sharp, how much public action you have, how many of those public guys have deep pockets in terms of, maxing out wagers and stuff like that. And then you figure into your sharp guys in terms of what they're looking for value. And I mean, generally speaking, sharp guys are looking for value on under. So, but you just don't know when they're going to come in or if they're going to come in.
All right, we'll move to the Big 12 here, one of the bigger games that we're going to talk about. Game 361-362, just down one spot on the board. TCU takes on Texas Tech. Big-time noon kickoff here in Lubbock. Early start, so we'll see if things get off a little bit slowly here. What's the sharp play in this game?
The sharp money I have right now is on Texas Tech, the home dog, when they were catching plus 7.5. Now, the line currently as we speak is 6.5. So we've gone right through 7 with no problem, sitting at 6.5 now. My wager count actually does favor TCU, which probably isn't much of a surprise there. I think Hill's questionable on this one. And, TCU, I mean, they are sitting there, the one that, the only kind of marquee team we're going to talk about on today's show, but they have lost 2 or 3. They lost last week to Oklahoma. Now again, Oklahoma's no shame losing them. They are a pretty decent team. And Texas Tech is one of those teams that puts up a whole lot of points. So grabbing a touchdown, just a touchdown and a half point extra in your favor based on the fact they can put up a lot of points is kind of comforting. But the fact that I've got sharp money on the dog Texas Tech plus the 7.5, and I got public money the other way kind of makes me feel we're sitting in a good spot now. I don't really get the feeling that I'm going to go back to 7, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. But if I did, I'm sure it would be public money. This game just kind of has the profile of something that's going to bounce between 6.5 and 7.
Well, what I was going to ask you about here, and I know you don't like to try and play psychologist with the sharp plays, you just want to move the market and make sure that you've got the right number. Is this a case where you grab 7.5 with that injury situation? Is this just kind of a line value grab, or did this feel like more of a true position type of play?
This looked like a true position type of play. As we talked about in terms of how we do profile our customers, and we do have our sharp guys, kind of profile quite well in terms of what their betting tendencies are, kind of what their individual profiles are. And there's guys who are out there who are just going to, grab a number that they think they're finding value on, and no matter how low that number goes the other way, they're not going to play back the other side. They're guys who are working on small margins. They're like ROI is like 2.5%, and they want to get down on the right side. They don't want to sacrifice any of that return on investment in the chance that the game doesn't middle or side and stuff like that. So the guy who grabbed the 7.5 is definitely a guy who's going to stand on that number. Now there definitely are guys who are out there who are just going to grab an early number, find value, and play back the other way. Like if someone can grab a 4.5 and then lay 4 later on, there's definitely customers who will do that sort of stuff. And again, it's kind of our job in terms of risk management to profile them correctly.
All right, we'll go back to the Fun Belt here for game 405, 406. Texas State takes on Arkansas State. This number has been growing throughout the week. A few shops opened up 24.5. It's 26 to 27 out there in the market, depending on where you look. But as far as DSI goes, it's sharp action on the total.
Yeah, there's a lot of spreads this week that are just like really, really high, and just not a ton of great games. Even games where you figure you've kind of got like a decent matchup and stuff like that. The point spreads are so high. I mean, like USC, UCLA, Pac-12 stuff is like 16 points there. Stanford's like 16 points versus Cal. So there's games that like kind of look like they should be decent games, but they have like spreads that are just like way higher than you would have hoped for in terms of the action this week. This game that we're talking about right now, the game 405, the Texas State, Arkansas State. The action that we have here, sharp action that came in, was on the under of this game. Again, Texas State really catching a whole lot of points. They're catching like 26.5 right now, but the sharp action did come on the total. My count's pretty much even, which is kind of nice. So I do have a little bit of public money involved in this game. Now, again, it's not one of those marquee games where you're going to get a whole lot of public action involved, but I do have slightly more wagers favoring the over. I have more money on the under because they came in the under 60. We're sitting at 58.5 right now, just kind of, based on the fact that I am going to get public action on the over, and we've moved, a full 1.5 off where the sharp bet at 60.
Well, and again, for our listeners out there, the market will tell you a lot of important things. You can get a lot of context clues from looking at what's going on out there. You've got a spread that opened in the mid-20s that's growing and a total that's coming down. So that kind of tells you what the thought process is here in terms of how this game's going to play out, with Texas State probably not scoring a whole lot of points in this game. So, again, for our listeners out there, look for those context clues in the market. Those things can really help you on a week-by-week basis. We'll slide down one spot here, Conference USA, game 407, 408. Florida International takes on Florida Atlantic. A couple of bowl-eligible teams in this one. What's the sharp involvement for this game, Brent?
Yeah, this is actually probably one of the better games that we're going to talk about this week. Talking about a 6-3 and 73 team here, Florida International and Florida Atlantic, and I do have sharp action on this one. This is a good spot for me right now in terms of it kind of sets up as a sharp and public split on this game. In that I do have public money betting the over this game, yet I have sharp money on the under of it. Sharp money came on the under 66.5 on this one. My wager count is almost 3-1 favoring the over. So that's kind of like a good spot for us for sure. And it's kind of like a contrast the styles of these two teams as well. I think Florida International just, I can't go back on all their scores, but they just seem like they've been in a lot of lower scoring games, where you got Florida Atlantic who've been in a lot of higher scoring games, and the under 66.5 is where the sharp guys grab this. The spread's like 14, Florida Atlantic, a home favorite of minus 14, but under 66.5 is where I got sharp action. We're sitting at 63.5 right now as well, so a full 3-point move on that total based on the sharp action mostly. And again, as I mentioned, I've got more public money on the over, a wager count almost 3-1 towards the over.
And this is another one of those spots for our listeners out there looking for context clues. Florida Atlantic scored 69 points in a game earlier this year. This total wasn't even that high, and this total is coming down. The spread's not really moving. So, maybe the thought process here from some people is that Florida Atlantic may struggle to score a little bit. If you think that's the case and you can get 14 points with the dog, maybe that's something that's kind of interest, and we'll see if this number actually stays there on 14 or not. But, again, you look for context clues out there in the market whenever you can. One more game to talk about here for college football. The last one on the board, at least until the FBS versus FCS games open. 421, 422, Nevada takes on San Diego State. A little bit of Mountain West flair for us here. Brent, what's the story with this game?
Yeah, it's a late game if you got nothing else to do on a late Saturday night. San Diego State at home to Nevada. Right now I've got San Diego State as a 16.5-point favorite, and the sharp money came in on the side of this one, came in on San Diego State minus 15. So we're up to 16.5 right now. I'm just kind of teetering back and forth between 16 and 16.5. Unfortunately for me, is typical with the public betting, heavy favorites at home like this. My wager count is almost 3-1 favoring San Diego State. So I got public money on San Diego State and the sharp money as well. And again, you're talking about an 8-2 team versus a 2-8 team who just gives up a whole lot of points. San Diego State, I think they've won a couple of games after bye week. I think they held like Hawaii to like 7 points and San Jose State to like 7 points, and they've rolled up quite a bit. So it's not that they're looks like they're playing decent defense to go along with that offensive there. So Nevada, like I said, sitting at 2-8, a team who gives up a whole lot of points. I'm kind of not comfortable with my position here simply because the Nevada doesn't look that good. San Diego State, they obviously need to win this game as well, even though they're sitting at 8-2. And, I got public and sharp money going the same way.
Brent, I thought you were supposed to tell people if they're bored and lonely on a Saturday night to come bet college basketball at DSI and give you something to do, right?
Is college basketball still on?
Yeah, the season's not over yet. I can assure you of that.
Wake me when it's over.
All right, let's go over to the NFL side here and talk about the professionals for a few minutes. We'll start out with game 453, 454 on the board, Kansas City and the New York Giants. The Giants are a train wreck, to put it quite nicely, after their awful performance last week against San Francisco. But again, we talk about this week after week after week. Sharp guys find value in the numbers, and they're going to play it when they see it.
Yeah, I was about to say you're ruining my whole sales pitch here. I was like, what's it going to take me to get you into a New York Giants bet today, Adam? Sharp money. That'll do it. Hopefully. Giants are a pretty big home dog here against Kansas City. Now, I mean, as bad as the Giants have been, if you look at Kansas City, their last 4 games, and the Giants' last 4 games, they're both 1-3. So this is pretty much a pick'em game on paper, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's how this works, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, both these teams, they've only won one of their past 4 games. The Giants, of course, have looked quite awful. Sitting here at 1-8, Kansas City is 6-3 still. No surprise, I've got a wager count almost 5-1 favoring Kansas City, and I do have sharp money the other way with the home dogs. This number's dropped despite the heavy count favoring the Chiefs. And again, no surprise, public players just don't want to bet bad teams, and obviously the Giants are playing the role of the bad team in this scenario. Like I said, wager count almost 5-1 favoring Kansas City. I did take sharp action on the home dog New York Giants plus 12, so quite a big grab there plus the 12. Now we are seeing like 10.5 with dog money or 10 itself, so you'll see 10s and 10.5 dog 15 out there. I also do have a sharp action on the total of this game, so I got a side and total on this one. They came on the over this game, over 43. Now, yeah, I mean, you could argue it was kind of like a low total, but the Giants, like you said, they just haven't looked very good at all. Over 43 is where I got sharp action on this one. We're all the way up to 46, so especially for the pros, it's quite a decent move. And if you look out there, I think there's even 46.5 out there, so you get the feeling this one might creep up to 46.5, and the spread tends to be creeping down. Like I said, you could probably see a board full of 10s by tomorrow.
Do you see 10 being the stopping point, though? I don't think this number gets to single digits, does it?
No, I don't think so. I think 10 is probably where it's going to hover around. Yeah, and again, if nothing else, the wager count is so high. I mean, 5-1 is quite a big wager count in terms of a side of an NFL game this early in the week.
All right, well, we'll take a look at what could be the best NFL game here on the board game. 459, 460, the Los Angeles Rams take on the Minnesota Vikings. Sharp action in this one, and I wonder if this is going to be a surprise to some people out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I do, I think the fact that I've got a wager count favoring the Rams is absolutely, will surprise no one. Again, I mean, Minnesota, for all, the fact that they're sitting at 7-2, that if they've won 5 games in a row and they're at home, it's still not, they're not the kind of team, maybe it's the identity with the quarterback situation going on, the injuries they had at running, whatever it is with that team, maybe, the public just doesn't identify with them as much. The Rams, of course, are a team that's putting up a whole lot of points, kind of like the young guns, the young coach, the young quarterback, all that kind of stuff. So I do have a wager count almost 3-1 favoring the Rams. So it's a nice spot for me in that I do have public money favoring the road team there, the Rams, and I've got sharp action on Minnesota. Now the line move hasn't been that dramatic, but again, we're sitting here at 2 or 2.5 right now. Actually, we're sitting on Thursday at 2.5. I got sharp action at -1.5 on Minnesota. So we're sitting at 2.5 right now, and 2.5 seems to be working for me. I did see like a 2.5 -115 out there at a couple spots. So you kind of want to, you don't want to stay away from going on 3, because once you get on 3, you kind of figure that you're probably going to have to sit there. So right now, 2.5 flat is where I am. Like I said, there are some 2.5 -15s out there. Just the fact that I've got more public money favoring the Rams is kind of holding me back in terms of having to go to 3 and juice. But as of right now, if I could stay at 2.5, would be a good spot for us, especially with the fact that the public is on one side and sharps the other way.
Well, we talked about all these games that have big game day moves, and I'm going back and forth on this one. I'm not sure if this is going to be a game that does have that big game day move, and if it does, it's anybody's guess what side it comes on. It wouldn't shock me if LA closes, -1, -1.5 on the road. Wouldn't surprise me if Minnesota's -3, -15, or something like that. This game could really swing either way before kickoff, I think.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's early in the week still, and you just kind of get by feeling and experience. But this, Minnesota does kind of fit the profile of one of those teams where the sharp guys are, look to find value. And again, they kind of sit back and they know that the Rams are like kind of like a popular team right now in terms of the betting public for sure. And Minnesota, like I said, they're not high flying, they're not flashy or whatever. I mean, they lost basically the only star they had was their running back Cook. He got knocked out a few weeks ago, but they haven't really missed a beat without him, having won 5 straight, and the Rams have won 4 straight as well. So it kind of sits like a profile where I think the sharps might find sneaky value with Minnesota, anything like 2 -05 or 1.5 like they already played. So I if it went up, that wouldn't surprise me, and it would be sharp action that drove it based on the fact that public's going the other way.
All right, now we got a couple more games to talk about, but before we do that, I just want to ask you a general overall question here, Brent, about this card in the NFL. This is something we talked about in the Super Contest segment here just before you and I started talking. Look around the NFL this week. You've got, Mitch Trubisky, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jay Cutler, Brett Hundley, Blaine Gabbert, Tom Savage, Blake Bortles, Deshaun Kaiser, Nathan Peterman, probably Kellen Clemens. You've got a lot of guys at quarterback who just aren't very good or are just journeyman guys that have been career backups and have never been able to play a whole lot. Are you seeing an impact of that in terms of the action here this week? Is it down based on previous weeks, or is it business as usual?
I was going to say, I don't even recognize some of those names that you shot out there. I would say that the games where we have heavy one-way action, it's kind of actually heavier than usual. But the games that we typically have less action on, it is lower than usual. I mean, the Houston, Arizona, for example, is just very, very low volume. Tampa Bay, Miami, very, very low volume as well. But I've got really big action on the Eagles Cowboys game. We also have big action on the Patriots game, which is kind of no surprise. There's always big action there. At the Rams Vikings that we talked about, really big action. And even Baltimore and Green Bay, I've got a whole lot of action there as well. So there are some games where I'm getting a lot of action. I'm actually surprised the Detroit and Chicago game. Detroit's a 3-point favorite at Chicago, and I'm getting a lot of action on that game as well. So there's kind of it seems like every week generally speaking, I get I'm going to say four or five games that are heavily wagered. We're talking outside of the Sunday night, Monday night, and Thursday night games. We've got around 4 games that get a ton of action, 4 games that get good action. There's usually around 4 games that just are kind of dead in terms of the action. This kind of sets up a typical week for us.
All right, well, we'll get back into the games here with some sharp involvement. We'll slide on down to game, 469-470. Cincinnati takes on Denver. Sharp action in this one.
Yeah, this is, not a very attractive game. I apologize for the fact that we have to speak about it, Adam, but it is the fact that I've got sharp action on this one, and that's on the home favorite, Denver. Again, these are two teams who both probably had a whole lot higher expectations. Denver sitting here with, I think they've lost 5 in a row now, something like that, at home. And they still, I kind of feel bad for that defense there because it still looks like it's a decent defense. They just look tired. They're just out on the field too much. Denver is a 2.5-point favorite at home right now. The line hasn't moved a whole lot because I actually have a wager count favoring Cincinnati, but I do have money favoring Denver. So whenever I have a wager count one way, which is Cincinnati this week, but I've got more money the other way, which is Denver, that's usually, that's a clear indication of sharp money, and that was sharp money that came in on Denver, minus 2.5, minus 0.5. Now, I'm 2.5, minus 115 right now. I know there's 2.5, minus 20s out there. I think I saw one book at 3.20, so it's kind of, trending that way in terms of, going up on Denver, the home favorite. And, minus 2.5, minus 0.5 on a home team with that defense kind of looks like, it sounds good to me as well. So the fact that I got the public betting Cincinnati, just slightly favoring Cincinnati, and sharps on Denver is a good spot for us. And again, I could see this number trending upwards. Right now, like I said, I'm 2.5, minus 15. So I've only moved from 2.5, minus 0.5 to 2.5, minus 15. But I get a sense that it's going up that way.
Well, my voice was trying to run away from me when I was introing that game, so apparently I didn't want to talk about it either, and it was kind of a subconscious thing on my part. It wasn't an active desire to avoid that game because it is one I did play in the Super Contest. So we'll see how that one plays out. But one more game to touch on here for this week in the NFL. We'll wrap up Week 11 with a total and with probably something that you do not want to see any single week. Game 471, 472. New England takes on Oakland, and you've got dreaded sharp money in this game. I've got
dreaded sharp money on the over. I've got public money on the over, and we've already moved a full 5 points on the total for this one. So yeah, it's not a good spot at all. The over is where the sharp money came. Over 50 is where that is, and since then it's basically just the public going with it, driving it up to where we are at 55 right now. I know there are some 54.5s out there, but this game's just trending upwards and upwards. Again, this is the Mexico City game, New England versus Oakland, and yeah, I mean you hit this one bang on in terms of whenever I got public money on the over and the sharp money on the over, it's not a good spot for us. And the thing too, like New England, it's almost every single week that I've got money on the over with their games. So yeah, it's not a good spot for us. And you figure opening up 50, that's a pretty decent total as it is. I do want to touch on the side just to mention, because of the wager count, both on the side and the total of this one are so one-sided. The count on the total is almost like 10-1, not quite 10-1. We'll call it 8-1 favoring the over. So that's a real big count there. And the side's almost the same thing. We're up to $7.15 right now. So I got a whole lot of money, public money only, just all over New England right now and all over the over. So anything involving, this game turns out New England and the over, it's going to be a bad spot for us for sure. Again, sitting at 7, from this one that opened up like 5.5 and 6. Hopefully I get some sharp money back on, an Oakland plus the 7, but still waiting for that to come in.
I mean, I think you kind of have to expect it, right? Because Oakland's coming off of a bye. We've seen those teams off the bye get steamed a little bit. Now, one of the adjustments that has been made, we talked about this on the show the last couple of weeks, where because there was that bye week steam, it seems like teams coming off the bye have had their lines inflated a point, maybe 1.5 points to kind of cut off that steam before you get it. But this is one that kind of profiles to me like you get that game day sharp action on the dog, right?
I hope so.
Maybe.
Adam. Yeah, no, it does. Like, and again, there's just certain games you kind of look at and you think, if this game, this trends the way it is, I get the feeling that at a certain point I'm going to get money back the other way. Whereas other times you look at games and you think, I just don't see that, money coming back at all. And again, I mean, the Raiders, they are only at 4-5, but they're a decent team. And again, New England's defense is okay. It has it has improved, I guess. They are sitting at 7-2, so they're not a bad team at all. But it's not like anyone's got the home field advantage or anything like that in this situation. So I do think that when by the time I hit 7 flat, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to hit 7 flat, it's going to be that point where I get some money back on Oakland. And it might wait until Sunday. It might happen tomorrow. I don't know, but I definitely get the feeling that money's going to come back the other way, and it won't be public money coming back the other way on Oakland for sure, obviously.
Well, Brent, as always, man, a real treat. We enjoy your time. Enjoy all that college basketball this weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Can't wait to get into that right now. Woohoo!